Zotero. My name is Camille Fitcher. I'm a librarian here at Polytechnique, and I'm responsible for Zotero training at the library. So before we start, I want to look a little bit at what we'll be covering as far as topics go today. So we'll be looking very quickly at installation and also a new service that we have, which is unlimited storage for everybody who has a Polytechnique email account. So if you use your email, your Polytechnique email to sign up for Zotero, you have unlimited web storage. We'll also do an interface overview just to kind of get you situated, what all the different buttons are on the software. Then we'll look at how to import references into Zotero. We'll look at how to organize those references, how to use Zotero with Word, and then we'll talk about how to share a library and how to share references. So we should be going on for about 2 hours today. So why would we want to choose Zotero as our bibliographic management software? It is an open source software, so that's quite interesting, especially if you're going to do inter-university or industry partnerships. Not everyone has access to a paid software, so it's a great way to make sure everybody has access to software. It is quite easy to use. It has a little bit less different functionalities than some of the other ones, but that also means it's a little bit simpler to learn. With the browser connector, you have importation that can be done in one click. So very quickly, you can add in references to your library. It has a great web platform that's really easy to share references with others. And also another perk is that if you are a member of the Polytechnique community, you get unlimited online storage. So this includes any type of file that you're able to drop into Zotero, such as any text, PDF, anything like that. So quite useful. So it is ideal for people who'd like to encourage open access, or if you have people that you're working with that already use Zotero. So those are the main reasons why. So we do have also a guide on the library home page. You can find our Zotero guide. So we do have little articles that detail each section of what we're going to be talking about today. And also the meeting today is being recorded, so you'll be able to access the presentation, the PowerPoint, and the guide after this webinar. So we're going to be touching on a lot of different little topics on how to use Zotero, and it's normal if you don't necessarily understand every single element, but you'll be able to rewatch any point of this webinar. So yeah, the idea is just to give an overview, and then once you play around with Zotero, you'll be able to rewatch certain parts of the webinar and hone your skills a little bit. So the first thing to get started is really to download the software. So downloading the software that goes on your computer. The next step would be to download the connector for whichever browser you usually use. So it has Chrome or Firefox options. Then the next step is to create an account, and this will make sure that you're able to use Zotero online as well as on your computer. So once all of these steps are done, when you're registering, if you'd like to have the free unlimited storage space online, it's important when you're registering to use your Polytechnique email account, and automatically you'll have access to free storage that way. If ever you already have a Zotero account, it's quite easy. You just have to go online in your Zotero web settings. Then you'll be able to click on account in the settings, and then you'll be able to add an email address. As long as one of the email addresses in your account is a PolyMTL email address, then you should have access to the unlimited storage. It's always a good idea to have a second address if there's ever a chance that you're leaving, you might leave the university, just so that you don't lose your account once you don't have access to your emails anymore. So always a good idea to add like a personal email address for recovery. To check if you have the unlimited storage, same thing, you can go in your settings under storage and you'll be able to see if the transfer worked. It should be automatic. If ever you have an issue with that, you can always contact me and we can check your account to see what's happening. So once all of that is done, you will want to synchronize your Zotero online account with your the version of Zotero that is installed on your computer. So really easily, if you go in edit preferences here, and then under sync, you'll be able to add your account right here. So this means that every time you change something inside of your installed version of Zotero, it'll be available in your online account and vice versa. So a little bit of an interface overview. I'll do that on the actual software here. So the way that it looks is you have kind of like if you had a Windows file explorer. So you have all of your the different folders, and you have your different libraries. So this is my main library, and then I'll have group libraries here as well. And for each, I can have some folders if I like. And once you click on a folder, then you can see everything that is in that folder. So all of the references that you've added. And once you click on a reference, you'll have access on the right-hand side to the metadata for that reference. If you have any notes, they'll be here, any tags as well. And here we have another piece that's useful. It's the Zotero preview. So this is a software extension. So since Zotero is a free open source software, there's a lot of extensions that are developed by users of Zotero that you can install if you like. And this one I quite like, just to make sure that I have everything, all the different metadata that I need to create a properly a proper reference. So here, for example, I'm missing maybe like a DOI or a link to add at the end of my reference. So then I know that I can go back and I can add that information in. So this is, I'll talk about it a little bit later, this little preview button, how to get that. There's a lot of other extensions that are quite useful. There's one that can help you rename your PDFs and with like a good different way of sorry, I have the word in French, but like des règles de nommage. So like having them all uniformly named a specific way. There's also an extension that can help you find DOIs for references that don't have DOIs. So those are all really useful ones that you could add to your Zotero. In terms of the different little buttons, what they do, so just so we can see them a little better, I'll use the screen grab here. Oh, there's something in the chat. Sorry about that. Yes, citation style. Thank you. So the interface, it's pretty simple. So we have folder or new library creations here. If you'd like to manually add a reference, it would be the little plus green button. To import automatically from an ISBN, DOI, it would be here. And I'm going to go over all of those elements in detail as we go through the webinar. So I'm going quickly right now. If you'd like to add a note, that would be the little post-it. If you need to add a file, for example, if you saved a file on your desktop, you create a reference for it and you'd like to link them, you can use add a file. There's the advanced search button here, which is quite useful if you have a really big library. You can also create saved searches, which creates like a dynamic search that's going to update over time. I'll talk about that later. There's the simple search, and if you'd like to force a synchronization, you can do that with the green arrow here. There's also this bit here, which is quite important, this other green arrow, and this can let you use a link resolver in order to find the full text of a reference that you have. So I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So a lot of different buttons, but a little bit less than in other reference management softwares. So for citation styles, so there's about 10,000 styles that are available in the style repository. So to get to those, if we go into Zotero, in the edit preferences, you'll see we spend a lot of time here to get started. So there is the cite button right here, and then you'll see which citation styles are automatically added to your Zotero. If you'd like additional styles, you can click here on Get Additional Styles, and from there, you'll be able to access a bunch of different styles. So this is useful if you're hoping to submit an article to a specific journal and they have a style in Zotero, then you can use that. A lot of universities will create their own style and put them into Zotero. So we have not created a style for Zotero quite yet. For now, there's different styles that you can use. There's the APA 7th edition that was translated by the University of Montreal. There's the APA 7th in English, and there's IEEE in English as well that's available in the library. And those are the ones that we suggest. If you're planning on doing a thesis or dissertation at Polytechnique and you'd like to use a style that has been created by the library, you would have to use for now either EndNote for APA or BibTeX for IEEE. Yeah, it really depends on what you're needing to do. If ever you need to transfer from one software to another, there's procedures online to do that. So let's say you're in Mendeley and you'd like to transfer your references to Zotero. There's definitely, like if you Google that, there's definitely like a procedure that's quite easy to do that. After a transfer, it's just important to check the metadata of your references to check that everything kind of imported properly. So what I mean by that is, for example, if this reference here came from a transfer from Mendeley, I just want to check the different fields here to make sure that everything was imported properly. So I did notice that when I transferred from EndNote to Zotero, I had to change some of the places where the software put the information. So I just had to tweak it a little bit. So that's just something to keep in mind. So to make sure that you have access to the full text of the references that you're importing, the best way to do it is, well, there's two things that are important to do. The first thing would be to install the link resolver to your Zotero. So it's quite easy. There's the link here, and I can put it in the chat as well. Oh, I'm not going to be able to copy it for you. I will copy it from, I'll just, I guess, open it maybe. Yeah, I'll just open it here. And I'll put it in the chat for you. There we go. So to install the link resolver, we're going to go in the preferences again. And what this is going to do is it's going to help you look up a reference in our Sophia discovery tool. So if you go again in the preferences, if you go in the advanced section, there's a section called open URL, and there's a place to put the link resolver here. So you can just copy the link to this section and then click on OK. And after that, if you want to check if we have a reference, for example, if you'd like to check on this one, you can either double click it. And if you have the proxy installed on your computer, it should automatically open the full text. So I'll just double click here. I'll use Firefox. And so it did open here. The full text is available here. Sometimes that's not going to work, especially if if you have a URL here, and if you imported the reference, for example, from Web of Science, and the URL here is like a Web of Science URL, it might not work. So the best thing to do is to make sure that the DOI here is good, and then when you double click, it should work. If not, you can also, with the link resolver, you can click on the article that you're looking for, click on the green arrow, click on library, look up, and then it will open the link resolver, and it'll open Sophia, our discovery tool, and you'll be able to click on view full text, and it'll bring you to the full text. So different ways to make sure that you have the content. So we see we have the document that's right here. So a few different ways to make sure that you're able to have access to the full text if you don't already have the PDF linked to your account. So yeah, two things, install the link resolver, and then also making sure that your proxy is installed on your browser. And then in the info section where we were before, ideally, the best thing is to have the DOI here. And anyways, that's what you're going to use when you're citing. It's really the DOI that you want and not the URL. And then if the URL is empty, when you double click, it'll use the DOI to bring you to the full text. And that's the best way that I've found. If you have a URL here and when you double click, it's not working, just make sure that it's the right URL. So you can also use the URL that is actually the DOI. That's also a good way to do it. So as I mentioned, you can absolutely have PDFs and link them into your Zotero, and then you'll be able to have them online. It's a good thing to note that there's kind of legal issues concerning keeping a lot of PDFs in a server. And in this case, the Zotero library online would be like a server. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you're not sharing a library with somebody that's outside of Polytechnique. So that's the best way to make sure that you're respecting the library licenses. The other thing is to make sure that you're using the open access version of an article if you're going to be keeping it in a server. But these are all general rules. Nobody's really going to check what's inside of your Zotero account. The idea is just that because you're using library content that is subject to licensing, it's important to try to respect the licenses, and that means ideally not keeping PDFs on a server. So just something to keep in mind, but obviously you still need to do your research, and so you need to use Zotero, and that means probably putting some papers on there. So there is a difference as well between like references and PDFs. So references, it's always okay pretty much to have inside of Zotero, and then PDFs, it really depends on if ideally not sharing them outside of the community. So we have an example here of the terms of use for IEEE, which is one of our main databases, so IEEE Explore. And it does mention that it's not possible to create an archive of IEEE. So yeah, just be mindful of that when you're using any type of server that you're putting PDFs on. So now we can talk about importation. So how to import references into Zotero. I'm going to show you 3 ways that are useful depending on the context. So the first one is the browser connector. It's the method that I'm most likely to use most of the time. So basically, I have a little image grab here. So anytime you're on the web and you're looking at documents, there's a little Zotero icon here, and it's going to change depending on the type of document that you have. And then you'll be able to import automatically just by clicking on that little tool. You can also import specific documents, like if, let's say you have a paper book with you and you want to import the reference, you can type the ISBN into a little field, and then you'll be able to import the reference that way. So it's useful if you have example like PDFs and you need to import the reference of the PDF. So you can just copy paste the DOI, or if you have a paper book, the ISBN. The last way is to use a RIS file. So this is a good method to use if you have, if you're doing, for example, a systematic review and you'd like to import like 500, 600 references at a time. If you do that with the Zotero connector, first of all, it's going to take a long time, and also the database might flag you as trying to scrape data. Sorry about my cats; they're having fun back there. Don't pay any attention to them. Yeah. As I was saying, if you're trying to use the Zotero browser connector to import like 500, 600 references, the database might flag you as trying to like scrape their data, and they're not going to like that. And they might block you. This can happen, for example, with Google Scholar. I know it happens. So if you don't want to do that, you can import using a RIS file, and that should solve that issue. So I'll show you those 3 ways. Regardless of the importation method that you choose, it is possible that there will be some little errors that will happen while you're importing. So it's always important to check the references that you're importing. And it's always better to do it like right as you're importing it, because if you do like a full day of research and you have like 1,000 references that you added to your library, and then you have to check all those 1,000 references, it's going to be really long and tedious. So it's better to try to do it like every time you're importing new references. So what I mean by this is that the way that I would suggest is to create a new folder for all the references that you're adding. So you could use, like, let's say, these are all the references that I added on the 12th of November, and then I'm going to add references in here, and then I'm going to check them. So here, let's say I have one reference here. So I'm going to check all of this information to check that it's okay. Then I'm going to transfer it wherever I want, but just to have like one folder where you put all the references that you haven't checked yet. And that way, when you get to the point where you'd like to insert those references into a document, you know that you've already checked it because it's out of that folder, if that makes any sense. So that's just a kind of like a way to organize yourself and make sure that all your references, are formatted in the best way. So a few more tips about importation. You can import a reference from anywhere. It's just that some places will have a higher quality of references than others. So if you import from Google Scholar, that's totally fine. It's just that you might have a little bit more correcting inside of the actual reference to do, but sometimes that's the best option. The places where you'll find the highest quality of references are going to be in databases such as Compendex, Web of Science, PubMed. So anything where the information is being checked is good. Usually in Google Scholar, it's all done automatically and it's not really checked, so the information can be wrong. The publisher website is a great place as well to find good information. And then also any library catalogs will probably be, checked. The metadata has already been checked by somebody. So it should be okay quality coming from any of these sources. But once again, it's fine to import references from Google Scholar if that's what you need to do. So the connector is the first method of importation. It's the easiest one, I would say. So we do have a bunch of different icons that are, they're basically the same connector, but it's going to change depending on what type of document that Zotero is recognizing. So I'll just show you quickly here. So for example, here I have a results list on Web of Science. I'll try to zoom in a little bit, but unfortunately this part here doesn't zoom in that much. But basically you have here a list of references in Web of Science, and my little Zotero icon is in the shape of a folder. So that means it realizes that it's on a results page, and you'll be able to kind of batch import references. So to do that, the one thing that's a little strange is you kind of have to go down the full page to make sure that it gets everything. So I just have to scroll down like this. And then once I click again on here, I should have all my references. Yeah. So I have all my references here and I see the titles. And so I can select which ones I want to add. So I can select all of them, for example, click on OK, and then I'll get my references all imported into the folder that I'd like. So I'm going to put them all in my 12th of November folder. And then from there, I'll be able to check those references by hand when I'm done. So that's kind of a batch importation using the the automatic import connector. You can also do this if you're on a specific article page. So you can see here that my icon has turned into a little article. So if I click on that, then it'll also import like this. Whoops. Then here, for example, I have the web page that references a book. And so you can see here that my little icon has not turned into a book icon. It has turned into a web page icon. So that means that Zotero doesn't quite recognize the type of document. So I'm going to use another method of importation in this case. The other thing that can happen is if you are, for example, here, and you download the PDF. Let's see if I can have it. I don't know that I can have this one. Let's try. This is article impress, so that's not going to work. Let's try this one. I just want to show you what happens when you have a PDF. Okay. So let's say I'm on a PDF here, and you can see that the PDF icon has appeared. And unfortunately, if you click here, it's not going to work very well to import the reference. It's going to, I'll do it. I'll click on it so you can see. It's going to give me like it's going to import the PDF, but it's not going to give me like a good reference. So if I go back to my 12th of November, I can see, oh, this one worked out fine. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. This one looks like it worked well. I do get the full reference. Sometimes what will happen is I'll get like just like a weird like name of PDF. So if ever that happens, then what you can do is instead of clicking here, you can click on the DOI. So let's see where we can find our DOI. Okay, I don't quite see here. I'll just use my example for the ISBN instead. So here I have my book, and then if I go down here, I have the ISBN. So I could just copy that, and I can go, and here with the little magic wand, I can paste my PDF, my ISBN, and then I have the book that's available here. So I'm missing a couple of information that I might want to add, but I have, at least enough to probably do a reference. Yeah, I have somewhat of information. Maybe I'm missing like a URL or something if it's a online book. So that was the automatic little import here. So I can use ISBN, a DOI, or a PubMed ID. And unfortunately, that's one at a time. So I can only paste one number at a time. So as I mentioned before, this is good if you have a paper document, and so you can just type in the information, the ISBN. It's good if you have like random PDFs on your computer. You can add them that way with the DOI. So it's a good method to know about, but it's not the primary method that I would use. Then the third way of importing references is with a RIS file. So this is very useful if you have a lot of documents. So let's say this is a more like specific search. I will try to do something a little bit more broad, so I have a lot of results. That's a little bit too much. Let's do I like this. Oh, that's even less. Okay, I'll try organ instead. Okay, about 1,000 results. So let's say I want to make sure that I have the 1,000 results. So the best way to do that is I can display 100 items per page here. And then what I'll do is I'll select each page. And so I'll have to do this, unfortunately, 12 times. But this is much quicker, obviously, than clicking on everything by hand. So you can see here that my selected records have gone to 300. And if I was to keep doing this, I would be able to add even more records. So we'll just stop there for time's sake. But here you see I have 400 records. And then what I can do from here, I'm on Compendex right now, which is one of the main databases that we use. But you can do this on Web of Science, or you can do this on most of our other paid databases. So then here, when you click on the little download preferences, then you can click on the EndNote option, and you see at the bottom here, it says RIS. So anything that says RIS or EndNote, it's going to work with Zotero as well. So I'll call it, call it whatever, 12th of November. And then I can download that. Oh, only letters. Okay. So that's going to create a RIS file that I'll be able to use to import 400 references at a time. So we'll click on save. And then once I'm on Zotero, then I can click on file, import. And then I have my RIS file here. I'll click on open. I'm going to, I'm not going to place it into a new collection. I'm going to copy the files into my storage folder. And I'm already on the 12th of November folder, so it should be good. Then it's going to import my documents. So it takes a little bit of time, but we should have them. Okay, it'll take a little bit of time, but that's the way to import automatically some references. And once I have my documents here, I'm probably going to want to check that all the references are okay. And as you can see, since it's from Web of Science, it's giving me enough information. If I click on preview here, I should be able to have all the information to properly cite the document. So that was the different importation methods. I'm just going to check that I said everything that I wanted to. Oh yeah, manually creating a reference. So this is useful sometimes if you can't find the document online. It happens. If you have an atypical type of document, like example, like a report, or if you have like a standard, or if you have a podcast or something like that, and so you need to create a reference for that, you can manually create a reference. So I see that it worked, finished, and I think it imported, yeah, it imported in my library, so I would just have to transfer that. Luckily, I have here, we'll talk about that after, but I have my 400 items here, so I could transfer them to there. Okay, but so let's say we wanted to create a manual reference or create manually a reference. So it would be the little plus, green plus button here. So if I do that and I click, for example, on book, then I'll be able to fill in all the different elements. It's just good to know if ever you need it. You don't have to fill in everything. You can just fill in what you need to cite. Another thing to note, it's quite small, but here you have either 2 fields or 1 field. So if ever you have a report that you need to add to Zotero, and the report is done by a government agency, so you'll want to here you have either first name or last name, or you have a single field. A single field would be if you have like a government agency or like a organization that you have to add, where there's not a first name and a last name. So you can switch between the two with this little icon. That's probably a little bit hard to see. I'm sorry about that. The other thing that's useful to know is if I have, for example, all capital letters in my title, this will happen sometimes if you import a reference from somewhere and you'll have capital letters like this. You can actually right click on this and change it from, for example, title case or sentence case. So here, example, sentence case. So I have everything, properly written. So this is one way that you don't have to retype everything, which is quite useful. So that was manually creating a reference. And I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, so it's important to check the info section. I've already told you about that. And then also the Zotero preview. So the extension, so basically it's Zotero preview, and it's an extension that helps you kind of see how it looks before you cite in a document. And then what you can do is click on this link here with the GitHub. I'll open it and I'll put it in the chat for you. But if you want to install it, it's quite easy. You just need to download the latest version of the Zotero preview, this one here. And then when you're done, once you go on Zotero here, you can go on tools and add-ons, and then it'll open a little window, which I'm going to try to bring to you. It's not up. There we go. Okay, here it is. So here you can see all the plugins, and you can, for example, install add-on from file, and then you'll be able to install. So pretty simple, and it's a really useful tool because it'll help you check what you're missing in order to create a reference. You can also choose the style that it's going to preview in. So if I wanted, for example, to use the style that I'm trying to create right now for our document, it would be here, for example. I could also use like IEEE instead. So just to give you an idea of how this works, I'll go back to my regular APA 7. So here we go. That's the Zotero preview tool. So now, in order to see a little bit how to organize your different references, so you can see that after a while, you'll have a lot of references, and it's going to become a little bit harder to keep all of those references organized. So you can create new folders, click on New Collection here. You can also, if you right-click on a folder, you can rename or delete it, or you can create a new sub-collection. It's important to note that everything that's inside of a folder is automatically going to be in your library. So even if you delete the collection, you're not necessarily deleted the items in the collection. And also the other thing is you can have items in multiple different folders. So it's possible to have them in all folders. One thing that happens sometimes is that you might find that you don't remember where you put a reference. So you don't remember which folder it's in. So for example, let's see, I'll just check what my example that I used for that was. Yeah, okay, so a book by Crispin. So if I'm looking for a specific reference here, I have Crispin, and if I go in my library, I'll be able to find it here, Crispin. So I have my reference here, and if I want to know in which folder I put this reference, I can click on the control button, and then it's going to highlight. I'll just show you again. So if I click on the document and I click on the control button, it's going to highlight in which folders I put it in. So this is useful if you're just trying to remember where you put your stuff. It's quite a little useful tool that I really like showing. So you just have to click on the document, click on control, and it'll show you where you put it. Okay. So that was how to organize a little bit. I have a few more elements on the organization that I'll talk about in a second. Yeah, the next one is saved searches. So saved searches are one of my favorite things, very useful. I'll show you a saved search that I really like using that's puts inside of a folder all of my recently added documents. So I'll show you what that looks like. So to create a saved search, it's quite easy. You can just right click on library and click on new saved search. And basically the saved search is a folder with a little magnifying glass inside the icon. And I'll just show you what it looks like. So here I have mine, it's called dernier ajout, so last added. So if I right click on it, I'll be able to edit it and show you what it looks like. So once you clicked on your, you created a saved search, and here you can search, for example, in my library, or you can search in a specific, in another library. So one of your group libraries, for example. Then I can add different criteria, and then if a document meets that criteria, it'll go inside of the folder. So it's going to be like, it's going to create like a link to that document. So for example, if I want to see the documents that I added to my library in the last 7 days, or in the last 14 days, or in the last month, I can do that. So you can see here, month, year, 7 days, is in the last, is before, is after. So I can create a saved search that's very detailed. I could also do this with a topic. So for example, I'll create a new search, new saved search here. So for example, if I wanted here, so any of the following, either title or, for example, abstract. Where's my abstract here, or my tags? And if any of them says, for example, on a chip. So here I'm going to click on search sub collections, and then I'll call this one on a chip. And then click on OK, and then you can see that it created 48 items. So they are items that have the words on a chip, either in the title, in the abstract, or in the tags. So that's kind of a method that you can use in order to like self-create, like automatically create folders on topics. And if I go inside of another database and I add new articles, then it's going to automatically add them here. So these are like dynamic folders that change over time depending on the criteria that you selected. So it is quite useful. So that's it for saved searches. Is there any, before I go on, is there any questions about importation or anything that I mentioned so far? What you can do is use notes. So instead of having like a separate Word document in which you, you analyze the reference, you could just create a note inside of Zotero directly. So for example, if I have a document here and I'd like to create a note, I have two ways of doing it. I can either go in notes here and add a new note, and then I have a little like mini word processor that I can use here. Or I can also add a new child note here. I can do one of those two ways. There's a tool that's really useful. It's another one of it's another extension. It's called, let's see what it's called. It's a Zotfile. So Zotfile is really interesting because it can help you rename your different PDF files. So this one has been renamed automatically by Zotfile. And the other thing that it does is if you annotate your reference, it'll extract all of those annotations and it'll put them inside of the little note. So that's quite useful. I'm not going to show you the full thing, but just remember the extension. It's called Zotfile. And if you're interested in it, then definitely Google Zotfile and see how it works. Another way to stay organized is tags. So tags are like another way of trying to organize your references. So one thing that will happen with tags is if you download tags, if you download references from some bibliographic databases, there's some tags that are going to be imported like automatically. So here you can see these are orange tags, and these have all been added automatically by the with the reference that you created. So I'm not sure if there's a way to automatically remove those tags. One thing that I know in the software that you can do is if you click here, you can delete automatic tags in the library. But it doesn't seem to work super well. Oh, it worked this time, so that's good. So you can delete the automatic tags if you want. The reason is that usually those tags are like too specific and you'll only have one document inside of the tags. So you can create specific tags that are yours. So for example, if again, with my on a chip thing, if I add here, for example, first of all, I'm gonna remove all the automatic tags. I can't do that in this one. Okay. So for example, if I want to add a tag, I can click on add here and I can do, for example, on a chip. And I can add, this is my tag. And then if I want to add it to another one, then it'll remember. So I just have to click O and then I'll have it here. So we have that. And this is great because then you have your tags section here, and then you can search inside your tags. And for example, if you have on a chip, then you can find all of the documents that contain the tag on a chip. You can also add color to your tags. So I use this, for example, here I have a collection of documents, and I have a tag here for when we didn't have the document in our collection and I needed to buy it. So I put a color code into it, and then I can see the little color code inside of my reference. So that's quite useful. So to do that really easy, if you have a tag, I'll go back here. If I have, for example, this tag here, or maybe I'll create a new tag. Let's see. I'll do here. So let's say I have this tag, I can right click on it and then click assign color, and then I can have a color added to it, set color, and then it creates a little color code. So something that can be useful to just organize your library and make sure that you are making the most of it. The other thing that will happen a lot is if you spend a lot of time in any databases and you import a bunch of documents on a subject, you're going to end up with duplicates. So this happens quite a lot. And so one thing that you can do is click on the duplicate items here in your library, and you can merge the items that are duplicates. So here I can merge, and then it's going to choose like the best option that it thinks is the best in terms of the metadata and merge it together. And if you're not sure, then you can check here If there's differences in the metadata, then you can choose which one you want. So for example, here with the date, you can choose either the full date or you can choose to have just the year. And let's say I just wanted the year, then I could choose that and then merge items, and then it'll only keep the metadata that I wanted. So this is really useful to make sure that you only have one of each reference and that your library is as clean as possible. So that was the duplicate items. So there's a lot of different ways to stay organized. I'm not going to go further on the topic, but I think you understand that you can find a system that works for you using either the tags, the folders, the smart search, or the dynamic search. So these are all options in order to make sure that you're kind of able to find yourself in all of those references. So now we'll go on to the section about using Zotero with Word. And then our final section is going to be how to use Zotero with sharing. So if you need to share with colleagues or, with coworkers, anything like that, I'll show you how to do that as well. So we have two last parts to the webinar that's left. So using Zotero with Word, I'll go into a Word document to show you what that looks like. So I have here my, my Word document, and I'm going to be able to cite documents while I write. And this is one of the main reasons why people enjoy using bibliographic management software, is because you don't have to write your own references anymore. So when you download Zotero, you want to make sure that the next time that you, so first of all, when you download Zotero, you want to close Word and then open it back up again. And then you want to make sure that you have a little Zotero tab that's happening up here. So if you see that Zotero tab, that means that everything works and you're going to be able to start using Zotero with Word. If ever you don't see this tab, one thing that you can do is go into Edit and Preferences. And if you go here in the site, you have the word processors, and then you can reinstall the Microsoft Word add-in. And usually that will fix like most of the cases. If ever in your case, you don't see the Zotero tab even after doing this, you can contact me and we can try to figure out together what's not working. There's a troubleshooting page on the Zotero forum that we can use to try and fix it together. But if the tab opens, then you'll be able to use Zotero. So the first time that you open up a Word document and you try to insert a reference, you can click on Add Edit Citation here. And then because it's the first time that we open this document, it's going to ask us to choose which style we would like to use for this document. So I'm going to choose IEEE, why not? And click on OK. And here I have a little Zotero search box that's going to open. And then I can type a keyword, or I can type the name of an author, and then I'll see the results from my library. So if I want to use, for example, this one here, then I can just insert, and then I have my reference that appears here. If I'm not quite sure what keyword to use in order to find the reference that I need, that's okay, because if I click, whoops, I've lost my little Zotero piece here. Okay. If I click here on the little Z, I can go back to the classic view, and then I have my full library, and I'll be able to just click on the folder that I'm interested in, and then I'll be able to add the document. And I'll click on OK, and then I have my second reference. Then when I'm ready, then I can place my cursor where I would like to have my bibliography or my reference list show up. And then I'll click back here and I'll click on Add Edit Bibliography. And then it'll create my reference here. Now, it's possible that there's some elements here that are not quite right. And if that's the case, then what I'm going to want to do is go back to my Zotero, change the reference there, and then click on refresh so that it changes here. So this is all like in gray. It's automatically generated text. So you can't just like change it. You have to go into Zotero, change it there, and then refresh the page so that it looks good. One thing that can happen is maybe I want to add a page number, for example. So if I right click on this gray bit here, then, oh no, it's not right click. If I click here and then I click on edit citation, then I can go back here and I can add, for example, a page number if I need to. And then it'll add it there. If I need to, for example, change this reference here, Introduction to Time Series and Forecasting, I'll go back here. And then I'll do here. So here, for example, if I need to change this, let's say the name of the author is spelled wrong here. It actually doesn't have a K, for example. I can change it. And then if I go back and I click on refresh, then you'll see that my name will change automatically. So that's the best way. If you find a little element that doesn't work, then you change it into your Zotero and you refresh the citations and then it will work. If ever you needed to change the style, you can do that and you can click on Document Preferences. And then let's say I wanted to change it to APA. I click on OK, and then it'll do it automatically. So that's the way to change it. So this is useful if, for example, you have to submit to a new journal an article and it uses a different style, or if you change your mind and you'd like to use a different style, you can do it automatically. So that's the document preferences, the refresh button I showed you already, and unlinked citations. So unlinked citations is, so as I said, when you click on something that has been generated by Zotero, it creates like a gray field and you have to change it into Zotero instead of changing it in your Word document. If you want to get a plain Word document with just text, you can do that, and you can click on unlinked citations to do that. It's just a good idea to note that if you're doing that, you can't go back. So what I suggest is creating a copy of the document that's still linked, and then creating another copy that will be your unlinked version. And then you can go back to the linked version if you need to. So this is useful if, for example, there's like some, you know, you're at the end of writing this paper and you need to send it to somebody who uses EndNote and they're going to want to modify it, then you can unlink citations. Or if you are just unable to figure out what's the problem, there's still something that's not looking good, so you change it to text, and then, you know, you do that at the end of your results of your writing. So that's pretty much it for the Word section. Did you have any questions for how to use Zotero with Word?
No.
Okay, great. So we'll go on to the last bit, which is about how to share, how to create a group and share your references with your colleagues. So you can, if your colleague has a library, they can invite you to a group and then you can contribute to that group, or you can create a group yourself. So I'll go into the online version of Zotero for this. So this works better with the online version. So once you sign in to the online version of Zotero, you have the groups tab here. Just as I mentioned, you can see your own library online. So if you're not using your computer, you can use the online version and you'll see your documents. And then you'll also see your group libraries in the same way. So these are some of my group libraries and they're shared. So if I'd like to create a new group, I can go on my groups tab here and I can create a new group. I can choose a name. So let's say, choose this name here. Oh, it already exists. This one doesn't exist. Okay. So I have a few different options. There's maybe, maybe you're doing like an open science initiative and you'd like to share your library to everybody. You can do that. It's going to be a public open membership or a public closed membership. If you want a library that's just for you and your colleagues, then you'll choose a private membership library. So we create the group and then you'll choose private. Then here in the library reading, you can add any group member that's going to stay private. And then you have a couple of options for the library editing. You can have any group members or you can have only admins. So if, for example, you want some people to only be able to see and not add, you can have members that can't edit and admins that can edit. And that's useful, if you have somebody that you'd like to invite to view your library, but they're not actually part of your group, then you can do that. For the file editing, if you have people in your group that are outside of Polytechnique, it's important to check the no group file storage option. The reason why is because it's not possible to share PDFs from our collections to people that are outside of the Polytechnique community. If you don't do that, then you can choose any group members. So if you have only your colleagues that work at Polytechnique, then no problem. Then you can click on any group members and you can save those settings. Once that's done, here in the member settings, you can invite people. So you can invite them using their email or their Zotero handle. And then you'll send some invitations and they can agree and join your library. Then the next thing that you'll want to do probably is you'll want to add documents into your library. So there's a couple ways of doing that. You can see here, if I synchronize my Zotero, that my new group has been created here. So I can put some of the documents from my library and add them here into my new group. And then if I go online and I look at my group library, so if I go back to my library here, then I can see, it might take a little bit of time to synchronize. I'll just force sync it. It should work. Yeah, there we go. So then you can see that I have 5 references that have been added. The other thing is I can directly, if I'm importing a document, I can directly import it into my new library. So this one here, done, and then it'll add this one into my library. It's gonna maybe take a little while, but it'll be there. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the group libraries. Did you have any questions about the group library section? So that's pretty much what I had to say for today about the different elements of Zotero. So I went over quickly, like a lot of different options. So just know that there's documentation that's available. I've recorded this meeting and I'm going to send it to all the participants as well. So you'll be able to rewatch as you go. I'm also available. My email is not on here, but it's at the beginning. I'm not sure why I did that, but my email is going to be available as well. So you can ask me questions by email if you like. We can set up a meeting as well if you need, and we can help you with any Zotero questions that you might have.